You won't need your cell phones today for any live polling or anything like that. Really, tonight's about reporting out about what we've learned over the past 5 weeks. As we mentioned just the other day or last week when we met, we'll be recording this session. It will be available online on the city's YouTube channel. So if you have any friends or family that have missed tonight's session, they can either come on Saturday in person at 10 a.m. We found a new venue. It'll still be at City Hall, but in the Shear Forum starting at 10 a.m. Just have a little bit more elbow room to hold that session. So uh, you're still invited to come on Saturday if you are attending tonight, but we'll be recording it as well. Um, it's 3 past. Why don't we get started and people can join in progress? Why don't we launch the presentation for this evening? All right. So we are almost at the end of our community conversation series. We finished our 5 focus conversation topics, and now we are doing the wrap up. As I mentioned, we will cover just what we learned over the past 5 weeks. Whether you're joining us for the first time or whether you've been along for the ride for the past 5 weeks, welcome. Uh, we're hopefully going to have some time for Q&A at the end. We'll keep this to an hour tight, so y'all can get on with the rest of your evenings. And as I said, we'll repeat this session on Saturday morning in person in the Sheriff. And again, so correction on the final item there, not the Open Park rooms. That'll be in the Sheriff Forum on the second floor of City Hall. You'll hear from each one of these folks tonight. If you don't know me already, my name's Akbar Ali Khan. I'm the Deputy City Manager. Jonathan, Cliff, Kelly, and Tony will lead summaries on each of the sessions that have been held over the past 5 weeks. So please save your questions if you have any for the end. These are the experts that'll be happy to answer them. Let's keep going. So if you recall, we've had 5 of these sessions: arts and entertainment, landscape architecture and oak tree preservation, business mix and visitor experience, sustainability, and then accessibility and disabled access we discussed this past Wednesday. In all, we had over 150 people across all the topics. In fact, we had a lot of people that joined us for every step of the ride. So thank you for those of you who made time in your evenings to come join us for each of these conversations. So just tonight, quick agenda for what we'll be doing. We're really reporting out. Again, you won't need your cell phones. If you missed that when I first started the presentation, we'll be sharing what we learned over the past 5 weeks. We'll also be sharing ideas on how we are going to balance everything that we heard. Some of them, might contradict other ideas, and we want to show you how we're going to go about that. And then we'll be sharing some next steps about where the project is headed next. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Community and Cultural Services Director Jonathan Surrett to cover the arts and entertainment discussion.
Thanks, Akbar, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight, or virtually at a later time that's convenient for you. All the way back on January 15th, we held our first focused group for arts and entertainment, as the entire downtown project centers itself around the existing Civic Arts Plaza site and the 2 theaters that we have in place. So a lot of our questions and conversations of that night was around topics of arts and entertainment and culture in the community. How can we build on what we have in the existing space and start to complement that in a greater way, and also take us into a new direction in the future as we start to expand some of those offerings and create a place where people really want to be and hang out and interact with us. So in front of you right now is a depiction. We were lucky enough to have Michelle with us through the majority, if not all, of these sessions, and she did her illustrative note taking and captured a lot of the conversation in artistic and visual form. So we heard a lot of conversation from the community in that first session. We had about 50 members in attendance and heard about what their expectations and desires are for arts and culture and entertainment as it pertains to a vision for the downtown. We started off by asking a question about downtowns that people in the room had visited elsewhere. And what about those downtowns really stuck with them? And we asked about, in thinking of these downtown places, really these places where people have specific memories of being in a downtown that is vibrant with arts and culture and entertainment. Where were some of these places? And through the app, people were able to submit their choices, and there's a lot of cities that came to the forefront. Keep this in mind because a similar question was asked throughout the duration of these sessions. So we heard people say, in as multiple answers came in that were the same, the text started to get a little larger. So we had multiple answers for Santa Barbara, multiple answers for San Diego. We also had San Luis Obispo and Paris and Chicago. And we wanted to hear from people about what was it in these downtowns that gave them this memory of a sense of place for arts and culture and entertainment as it pertains to these cities. And overwhelmingly, what we heard was a desire for diversity in terms of types of interaction. People wanted to see performances and visual arts and where music can be mixed in and different culinary experiences. We touched on the need for accessibility, although that itself was a topic in a later session. It did come through in some of the others as well. The need for a place where everybody feels that they have some sense of participation and ownership and belonging in those spaces. We heard from people that we wanted to have a place where people can gather together, places where we could have farmers markets, or we can have festivals, we can have these arts experiences happening as we move through a downtown space where people naturally just want to gather. Places for youth to be able to gather. You don't necessarily need to be able to come and buy things in a commercial setting. You might just sit outside, grab a cup of coffee, and read a book for a few hours, and just have a sense of a place where you can be and exist and be with other people in your community. A place where we could have performances, like I said, and music and food, places where people want to be drawn to, where they feel comfortable spending large amounts of their time, where they can be interactive if they want, or where they can sit by themselves but still in proximity to others. Where there's a mix of engaging opportunities, whether it's participating in the arts, food, um, shopping and commercial settings, or even just, like I said, grabbing a book and sitting down for a place to have some quiet for yourselves, but still have activity happening in the surrounding areas. So we heard a lot from our session where, we asked these ideas. What can we really do to complement the idea of what we have existing? And if we do have the opportunity to put residential in these areas, what else can we add into this space that would make us stand out, that would make this area of Thousand Oaks a place where people want to be? And we heard things about food as is the most bold imaginative thing here. Everybody loves to eat, so we heard things about food. We heard a request for gallery spaces and bookstores or reading areas for art, for arts education, and really for participating in the arts and culture and entertainment in outdoor settings. So over the next 5 weeks, we heard a number of other topics as well, but that was kind of a recap of what we heard from arts and entertainment, and I look forward to hopefully answering any questions you might have at the end of the presentation this afternoon.
All right, now we'll turn it to our Public Works Director, Cliff Finley. Oh, I'm sorry,
Akbar, hi,
not are
thank
you
you.
tech?
Yes,
Change.
yes, I'm filling in for Cliff tonight. So, Nader Hidari, Deputy Public Works Director, and we're going to now touch on the second focus group meeting we had in the recap from January 22nd, which is what before you here. And similarly, we had the ability to collect feedback at that meeting and capture it all in various formats, written as well as graphically here. And as I'm going to describe as we move into this topic, you're going to see some similar themes as Jonathan was expressing the way that we were receiving the feedback and some of the ideas that had been captured. And so these are the three main ideas that were explored in that meeting. And as I mentioned, there's some overlap with the arts and entertainment as well. But the types of community spaces desired by the community, um, how to best celebrate the existing oaks, which there's several of them are existing on this downtown campus area, and visions for what beyond the oak trees, what a broader downtown urban forest should be. So those are some of the main ideas that we explored in that meeting. Uh, Also, we had a poll of that meeting. We're trying to capture other best practices or areas where they've celebrated the landscape and trees in an urban setting, in a downtown setting, and these are some of the um, elements that emerged as top contenders or highest number of inputs. So some of them are local, such as Ojai and San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara, Paso Robles, et cetera. And some of them are, non-local. You've got items on there, including, from Savannah, Georgia, and Cinque Terre from Italy. So it kind of ran the gamut, but these all give us ideas as to what we should be looking to for inspiration and for ideas to try to mimic best practices. And also taking that further, the ideas that we heard from the community in that meeting are listed here. Walkability and being able to connect to the outdoors as being a critical element of a successful downtown, and having different types of walking paths, access in and out of the building, access around the site, maybe even a walking loop around the site as some sort of passive recreation space, and public spaces and designs that can satisfy different community needs and functions, particularly with the outdoor sections. So these were very good ideas that we heard that we're going to look forward to capture into the design of the project. And we also solicited some feedback on the type of plantings that are most favored by the community, and the native plants was the emerged as the definitely a favorite, as well as having some color incorporated into the final design of the project, and having that as a kind of a combination um, for the features of the landscape for the project. So as kind of a recap, we've the idea of incorporating the existing oaks on the campus as a significant or key feature of the downtown area, definitely something that registered, and a preference for passive spaces beneath the oaks to benefit people, which actually satisfies some of the comments we heard earlier for having the quiet spaces to have a sense of community and a place that you want to be. Um, and seating around the trees and trying to retain them as much as we can, and having some interpretive areas or some fun facts along the way or a story trail through the area. So that was the brief recap of the landscape and architecture and oak preservation meeting that we had. And again, as Jonathan mentioned, look forward to any questions at the end of the meeting.
All right, thank you, Nutter. All right, week number three was our business mix in visitor experience. We'll get right to our graphic recording board. This was a lovely piece of art that Michelle captured during our conversation. We explored a few ideas. We'll throw them up on screen here, four to be exact. Kind of the differentiators between the downtown and some of the other areas like the Oaks Mall or the Jams Mall or the Promenade, by contrast. We looked at what are those critical elements that we needed to support downtown businesses, not just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but also Monday through Thursday. And third, we took a look at what are those amenities and businesses and cultural events that we need to create a thriving downtown, things that you might find in other successful downtowns. And then lastly, our goal here is to create not a downtown on just the 17 acres in which the Civic Arts Plaza sits, but really to catalyze a broader downtown area, minimally a downtown core from Herbs Road to Caneo School, and then kind of the outskirts of a downtown from, say, Rancho all the way beyond Caneo School Road as you near Skyline Drive. So we asked, just like every session so far, we asked what downtowns best exemplify a good visitor mix or business mix and visitor experience. I loved some of these responses in particular because it just ran a wide gamut of different downtowns, large, small, uh, abroad, and domestic. Um, just I'll just point out a few. Morocco was one that was kind of interesting, all the way to Switzerland, and other things that are closer to home. Santa Barbara, of course, seen as a really good uh, visitor experience close to home that we can point to. Um, and partially, I think when we dove deeper into some of these responses, each one of these downtowns did a great job of not only curating some of the uses downtown, but then also programming the public spaces. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So, what are the ideas that we heard? And you'll see some themes here from what both Jonathan and Nader have already shared, and also what Kelly and Tony will talk about in their summaries as well. But walkability is yet mentioned again, and you'll hear more. Community spaces and walkability, key components of a vibrant downtown. All the downtowns that I showed on the previous slide, they are certainly marquee examples of walkable downtown communities. The second thing is we have these existing venues here as anchors, and while we have two beautiful venues, the big question mark is how do we best complement those two venues, which are public investments, ones we made several years ago, and we continue to invest in them as part of maintenance. But really, we have the makings of what could be a really stellar downtown experience, but we don't have the retail or those other complementary uses to go with it. And then thirdly, there was this desire, if we can go back just a hair, there we go. There was this desire to um, feature local. We have many local thriving businesses that maybe we could showcase and highlight to our community that might be kind of tucked away in the corners of our city today. Maybe they want to expand into a different footprint. Um, and then focus on more of the experiential retail, restaurant, food and beverage. Culture is going to be our main driving economic factor here. Um, if you want to go buy a new pair of shoes, there are probably better places in the city to go do that. The Oaks and the Jan's Mall probably being among them. However, if your goal is to uh, experience art, experience food, um, enjoy the public amenities in this that this community has to offer, this downtown is where we want that place to be. So down below in the green box there, you see some of these direct quotes from the session. Strong community DNA, mixed use, multimodal transportation options, rotating art. We spoke about programming, keeping things fresh, something that those other downtowns did really well. A trolley has come up from time to time. In fact, I think 3 out of the 5 sessions we heard reference to a trolley. Doing that on a limited basis, maybe in the summertime, could be something we introduce. Um, and then walkability, again, kind of a key theme throughout all of these sessions. And I like the two middle boxes too, talking about um, support up and coming chefs and supporting our creatives, two groups of people that we want to celebrate as part of this downtown. We asked another question. We asked what sorts of things should we bring to this downtown? What sorts of programming and events? Really, it's not just about creating the physical space, it's also putting in the work to bring things that people want to do in that space. One of the things that we are exploring right now is creating kind of a true town square or reintroducing a true town square into the design. And really, the obvious question is, well, it's not just about that town square, it's what do you do with it? So we asked the community during this session to come up with those very ideas. You see some themes here: holiday market, live music, farmers market. Farmers market is something we've talked about from the outset. Outdoor movies. Um, I, like others, lament the closure of our only independent film theater. Maybe we bring that back on a limited basis with some of this for movie night. Um, but just a really nice cross section of different ideas that we could do on that town square or even the amphitheater on the southeast section of the program. Another theme that has crept up at pretty much every session, and for those of you that have been with us at more than one session, I'm sure you could corroborate my story here. The idea of how you get to a downtown and what sorts of multimodal transportation options one might take. This has been a steady drumbeat. There's been a broad support for uh, sure built-in parking for convenience sake. For people that want to drive, they can drive. But those that don't want to drive, they can have other options. And so here's a response of other options that we could provide. Improving the bike lane setup on Thousand Oaks Boulevard and getting here. Once you're here on a bicycle, making sure that you can park that bike safely and securely. Um, Rideshare and drop-off pickups, maybe more than one for a program of this size would be nice. Charging not only for your cars, but then also for those e-bikes, which I know have grown in popularity over the past few years. And then lastly, a bus stop, which we do already have them on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, but making sure that that is preserved, if not enhanced. All right, with that, that wraps up our business mix conversation. I will turn it now to Kelly Clark on sustainability.
Hi. As mentioned, I'm Kelly Clark. I'm Sustainability Division Manager, and I'm here to talk about what we heard at our sustainability topic meeting just a couple weeks ago. So we focused on asking three questions at this meeting, or three main topics. What are the drivers of sustainability? What community values and priorities are out there? And how can this project act as an example of what sustainability can be within our city? And we had some really great responses and wonderful participation. I do want to thank everybody again for taking the time to participate in this session as well as all the others, because I think your feedback is really important, especially in something like sustainability, where understanding what sustainability means in this community is really important because it's enormously broad. It can take on many different aspects. And so we got some really great feedback of where we want to emphasize sustainability as we go forward. Next slide, please. So as with all of them, we asked the question of, when you think of a sustainability city, what comes to mind? And we had a little more clustering than maybe in some of the other ones, but Portland, Ventura, and San Luis Obispo, it seems, has come up across a number of the conversations we had. So these were good exemplars for us to work with as we start thinking about what our downtown campus will look like. Next slide. Ideas we heard. When it came to sustainability, there was a huge emphasis on accessibility, walkability, and bicycling ability within the campus itself and how you get to it, connecting it to other neighborhoods. We looked at resiliency and flexibility. As time goes on, we want this project to persist, and we heard from the community repeatedly that not only do they want this project to be used currently once it's built, but also for generations to come. And so that entailed making sure there are adequate resource use and protection and efficiency, minimizing waste, making sure the space is flexible, and looking at our carbon footprint, our green spaces, and how this campus plan can fit into both the social fabric of the city as well as our overall plan. Next slide. And because sustainability is so broad, one of the ways that we're looking to drill down on this is through the American Institute of Architects Design Excellence Framework. This looks at 10 components of sustainability and gives us a way to think about the design overall. So we asked the participants, which of these areas are most important to you. Integration, communities, ecosystems, water, the economy, well-being, and energy. And we have the results of our poll on the next slide. And what we saw was that one of the most important topics to everybody was energy. So looking at the resources we use, whether it's renewable, whether it's clean power purchasing or on-site generation. And then for second place, we had a three-way tie between water, integration, and equitable communities. And this gives us a good roadmap to think about where we want to emphasize and prioritize sustainability investments in this campus plan. So in energy, we can look at how we treat our carbon emissions, both those going forward from the city and the carbon embodied in the buildings already. We can look at renewable energy production and storage and passive design strategies, ways we can use the environment around the downtown to make it so we use fewer resources in terms of both how we design our buildings, potentially even how we position our buildings and the amenities available. When we think about equitable communities, making sure this downtown campus master plan has a lot of public amenities that serve the needs of our community and are accessible by the community, whether that includes bike lanes, which we heard a lot about from across all the sessions, and other mobility assistance devices in there. And then community engagement as well, making sure this downtown, as we talked about through the other sections, is really a place where the community has an opportunity to engage with each other, engage with business, engage with the arts and culture and nature potentially as we look at the design. And then, yes, thank you. Next slide. The other one that overlaps with is mobility and transportation. And this is a big portion of sustainability, but also the broader thoughts of where we go. How do we get here? And unlike the business from the previous section, we saw bike lanes come up as one of the most important topics or most voiced topics for sustainability. Rideshare pickup, bike parking are also important, but we really saw an emphasis from the community on the desire for bikeability within the project and connections to the surrounding neighborhoods. And now how this can work as an exemplar within our city was another important topic. And from the community, we heard that this project can be an example for other developments in the community, for other cities. And we want this to kind of be a shining star when it comes to when you think of a sustainability city, just like was asked on the first slide, what we want is people to think of Thousand Oaks when it comes to that. So a landmark project, potentially seeking and winning awards with it was one response. Minimizing our resource use was another. And also showing that mixed use and sustainable spaces can be a blessing and use for the community and that they're enjoyable for people to experience. And next slide. And I think that was all for sustainability. So thank you again to everybody who participated in this.
Thank you, Kelly. And now we'll move on to our fifth and final topic, accessibility and disabled access. Tony.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tony Tomasello. I'm project manager with the consultant team, and I'll be walking us through what we heard related to the accessibility and disabled access focus topic meeting that we had just last week. This is, again, the just amazing graphic notes that we have from all of these focus topic meetings. I think are a really great way to memorialize so much of the detailed conversation that we had. Summarizing some of the ideas that we explored in this focus topic session, really identifying potential barriers to accessibility and understanding what those challenges are within the existing residents and populations, how to create inclusive spaces and integrate principles of universal design, kind of using ADA as a baseline, but where can we really kind of push the boundaries and create a lot more integration of accessibility throughout this program, and how downtown can be a space for all residents of TO, seeing this downtown as kind of that backyard for the entire community. What does that really mean, and how can we try to accomplish that in this program? Next slide. So again, this was the question of what cities come to mind when you think of places that are truly accessible. And we heard some really insightful comments. Again, just among all the threads which we'll hear about, so much of that experience is related to walkability, of ease of navigation, of wayfinding, and some kind of I'll say things that we would assume, but you can take for granted sometimes in terms of how to create an accessible place. Some of the ideas that we heard were that accessibility comes in many forms. Physical accessibility, as we traditionally think about, economic accessibility in terms of the affordability of entertainment and recreation options, and social accessibility as well. We heard a lot about the need for flexible and accommodating public spaces that are welcoming to everyone, things like uh, accommodations in public restrooms, to quiet spaces for people that may have sensitivity to noise. And so really trying to create public spaces and outdoor spaces that can kind of provide for the spectrum of activity, whether it's very active to places that are really areas of respite within this downtown program. And lastly, the downtown as a space that everybody can see themselves in. We really want to inspire that ownership of Thousand Oaks residents, so that the downtown is an active and desired place for everybody to come and enjoy and visit. We asked a similar question, as you've seen in multiple previous focus sessions, about the types of transportation options that would be most useful. And I think one of the interesting things that we see with this is that bus stop is pretty high on the list in terms of accessibility. And so trying to highlight that transit mobility and public transportation is also a critical factor for accessibility and inclusivity in the downtown area. And with that,
Right.
I'll pass it back to Akbar. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. So now we'll take a look at, now that we've covered all five sessions, let's take a look at some of the things that were common to all of them. And again, this is not meant to be a complete list. There were, I mean, if you look down at the bottom third of your screen, those are all five of the graphic recordings all stitched together. There's a heck of a lot of content on there. In fact, we're pouring through all of it. I'm going to get to in a minute just how we're going to go about sifting through that. But these 5 points are just meant to distill some of the things that we saw as common themes as we went through all the information. First and foremost, really, there was this loud rallying cry for prioritizing pedestrians. We have so much of our city where cars are the rule of the road, and there's a desire for there to be at least one community space where that is not the case. Um, there's still an acknowledgement that we live in a suburban community that is largely car oriented, but for the purposes of creating this downtown space, we want to prioritize pedestrians. This can take shape in many different forms. One that keeps coming up is perhaps limiting cars or limiting Main Street, the eastern portion of Main Street between Dallas Drive and the Lakes Drive, to only pedestrians, or maybe during certain portions of the day or portions of the week. The second is featuring local businesses and entrepreneurs that complement each other and complement the existing uses. There's a desire, in fact, we kind of joke that if there's an Applebee's or something, maybe we missed if that's the anchor tenant to, nothing against Applebee's. It's more just meant to be symbolic of, we want to celebrate the local establishments, And we see them as perhaps synergistic with some of these other uses here on site. Third, and as Tony mentioned just a minute ago, accessibility can take on many different forms. Yes, we think about it in terms of disabled access, but it goes beyond that. There's an economic access in making sure that whether you come to downtown with $5 in your pocket or $500 in your pocket, there's an evening for you, that there's something for you to do. Um, and you can feel like this is the community's living room from people of various backgrounds, age-wise or economic means-wise. And then we've talked about this throughout every session is the transit mobility piece and making sure that accessibility is preserved through giving people options of how to get here. Fourth is the flexibility and variety of public spaces. We want to make sure that as we use the term the community's living room, that there might be a living room that's more suited to you. Maybe there's a place that's more contemplative and quiet. Maybe there's another place that's more energetic and lively. So whatever suits your needs, whatever suits your mood for that particular day, you can go to any one of these places and feel like there's a place for you based on how you're feeling. And then lastly, we want to acknowledge that, this is our opportunity to make a place that's reflective of our community, that this is not anywhere USA. This is a city and a community that we're incredibly proud of. We want to honor that and have a connection to our surrounding environment, both on a cultural level as well as an environmental one. So you might be asking, well, how are we going to sift through all these ideas? In fact, some of these are competing ideas. I'll be perfectly frank. We heard lots of ideas, and we obviously are not going to have the space to accommodate every single idea that was thrown out there. Um, I want to share a little bit about our methodology of how we're going to look at this. So we have the three big circles in the middle. Market viability essentially refers to what's going to be economically feasible, what's going to stand on its own 2 feet. I mentioned we want to have uses that are viable not just Friday through Sunday, but also Monday through Thursday. That's what that circle refers to. The lower left circle, implementation cost, is somewhat self-explanatory, but it just refers to how expensive is this going to be to implement. Different types of uses come with different costs. And then on the bottom right, community desires, also self-explanatory. Those are the items that people voiced an interest in during these sessions. We're going to weight that heavily. But where these circles overlap, that tiny little triangle in the middle, where all three circles there, downtown Thousand Oaks, that's where we want to focus our energy. We want to see, is there a sweet spot where all three of those circles meet? And those are the uses that we're going to really pour our attention towards. On the outskirts of the slide here, you'll see some rating criteria that we will likely apply. And again, these will be weighted differently. We want to just make sure that we're doing our due diligence when looking at uh, all these different uses that different community members have put forward. So whether it can sustain revenue, is it synergistic with the other uses on the site? How much of a public benefit there is, the operational structure and the maintenance that will be needed going forward, the program design and how it can be phased, and then literally how much footprint does it take up and can it be accommodated? In terms of next steps, we finished our focus discussions and public workshops. Of course, we have one on Saturday, but we will go into overdrive mode on taking all this information and applying it to the design, and then getting back in front of the city council with some updated renderings. All the renderings that you saw over the past 5 weeks and even before, those are coming up on a year old. The RRM team developed those in April and May of last year. Time has flown by, and here we are almost a year later. And it's time for a little bit of a refresh on some of those that incorporate some of the feedback that we've received. I'd like to ask you all to mark your calendars for April 8th and May 13th. Those are two city council meetings. Those will take place at 6 p.m. in the Share Forum. You can participate in person or you can join online. The city council will be going through a conversation not unlike some of the conversations we've had over the past 5 weeks, where we'll be asking them specific questions. We'll be sharing with them how some of these ideas that we've heard can be incorporated. We'll do that in two different sessions in April and May. And then we kind of put pencils down for a little while. We'll wrap up our application and take this entire project and put it through environmental review. For those of you that are familiar with the environmental process, you know that it is intensive. It takes time. We'll be doing that for the better part of a year, and then come back in front of the Planning Commission and City Council in late spring of 2026. So with that, that wraps up the presentation. We're right at our 45-minute mark, which is where we hope to be. Again, we have one last session on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. For any of your friends that missed tonight's session, please let them know that they have yet another chance. We'll be in the share forum, and the team and I are available for questions. If there are any, I'd ask that you use the raise your hand feature that's embedded into Zoom so we can invite people to speak in order here. Thank you. All right. Well, team, we must have done such a tremendous job of sharing the feedback. I don't see any hands up. Keep in mind if there's something that comes to you later tonight or in the middle of the night, you're welcome to send any one of us a direct email or come back on Saturday. This is certainly not the end of the conversation. We want to make sure that this team is accessible. And of course, we entertain any ideas as we head into the next stage of design. So if I don't see any further hands, we'll call it a night, allow you all to get back to your evenings. And I just want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Take care, everyone.